Okay, so anything we need to cover before we go live?
Well, I just was wondering if we're going to talk about your male menopause with that new convertible.
Fuck yeah, bitches! We're gonna definitely. On this episode of the John 1911 podcast, ammo prices going up, the Mac SVD drama, listener questions, and the truth about Jack Shacks. Okay, good evening, everybody. This is Danny, Marky, and Freeze, and this is episode 207 of the John 1911 podcast. How's everybody doing so far today?
Fine.
I'm doing great.
Yeah. So we were just saying before we went live, Danny has had the COVID shots and it kicked his ass. Freeze believes he had COVID this week, or last week, which he basically probably still has it. And I'm exhausted from running around like a madman in the armory the past few days. So we're going to do the best we can to get this podcast out. But if we sound like three broken down old men, I just want to give us a little slack on this episode. So, well, I mean, nothing's really happened in the news since the last time we were together, right?
No, not much.
Been pretty quiet. Just everyone enjoying the spring and looking forward to putting COVID behind us. And
unless you're in Atlanta or Boulder, Colorado,
and since Donald Trump's no longer president, we can all quote get back to normal, right? That's what they all promised us.
I have a little note for that on the political side. Since Donald Trump is not president, did you see what happened in Ohio today with Ford Motor Company?
No.
They, under Trump, invested $900 million in the Avon Lake plant, wherever that is in Ohio, where they build the Fords. And now that Biden is in, they said, nope, we're pulling stakes and moving all that production to Mexico.
Oh, wow.
There's been a lot of that shit. Well, did you hear what the Chinese did when they showed up to meet, is it Blinken, the Secretary of State up there in Alaska for the summit?
No.
They showed, the media's not really reporting it, but basically the Chinese delegation showed up and for like 15 minutes just harangued the American delegation, basically like, how dare you? You're arrogant. You're this. You treat, don't lecture us about human rights in Hong Kong. You commit genocide against African Americans, and you treat the Indians bad, and like us, all these communist tropes. Like the Vietnamese used to do this, the Paris Peace Accords, and it's just like the people from the State Department from Biden administration, they literally didn't know what to do. They had they were sat there dumbfounded, because Donald Trump's not president, and Donald Trump's people would have got him walked the fuck out.
Yeah, but Biden's people have to pander to that bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Well, because these diplomats, they never want to operate from the position of power politics. They always want to default to this idea of let's find common ground, let's try to do all this and that. And a lot of times that really only works if you have certain things in common. Like, I'm not trying to lecture anybody on history, but we really couldn't find common ground with Adolf Hitler. Peace in our time, Chamberlain, dude. Yeah, peace. We can make a deal and whatever, and you're making a deal with crazy fucking people, and surprise, they're crazy and they're going to do shit. If you show them weakness, they're going to eat your lunch.
Charles Lindbergh found common ground with Hitler.
He just liked the airplanes.
Well, exactly, but that was common ground.
Yeah, well, Charles Lindbergh. Well, what was it? Charles Lindbergh, the guy that first guy to fly across the Atlantic Ocean solo, the Spirit of St. Louis. I swear we don't prepare for these ahead of time, everybody. But Charles Lindbergh, he was very enamored with Germany pre-World War II.
He was a right little Bundist.
And yeah, and there were grumblings of this when the Trump administration. They used to have these rallies around the country in like 1940 in 1939 called the America First. And basically it was like, keep us out of the war. We don't need involved in wars in Europe. And Lindbergh really liked the technology and like in Germany, the stress and the focus on, we're gonna have the greatest technology and the greatest airplanes and the trains and all this, and like he was really into that, and he bought into a lot of that. And then obviously when December 7th, 1941 happened, and then the war happened, and then everything came out what was going on there with the Germans, he looked like an asshole. And didn't he try to get a commission? He tried to. Basically, he wrote to Roosevelt saying, "Let me fight." And I think the only thing they would do is they would let him do shit in the Pacific, right? They wouldn't let him anywhere near Europe, right?
No, I don't think they even let him fight at all.
Well, wasn't he accused of being a Bundist?
He was a Bundist.
He was.
Oh, he was a Bundist. Okay.
Yeah.
See, I mean, so yeah, I mean, there's this, yeah. So, I mean, common ground, like all that fancy, like he loved all those fancy airplanes, and the Germans loved
getting back to common ground, Marky, and the Democrats' way of doing things, you hit the nail on the head. Who's the Ohio Senator? Sherrod Brown? Whatever it is? Sherrod Brown?
God.
Well, he came out when Ford announced their moving plans, and basically verbatim, well, let's find common ground on this before you pull stakes. That's exactly what he said.
I'm half surprised Sherrod Brown didn't come out and say, we're just gonna nationalize your plant. Because he is so nuts, that guy. And it's, Sherrod Brown is not a guy. No, and again, nobody nationally knows who Senator Sherrod Brown is. Because he doesn't get a lot of press. But he talks in tropes. He talks in bumper stickers, and he actually has no depth to any of his conversations. And I have been witness to him just being eviscerated, in public by people that actually can add 2 + 2 = 4. But no one ever calls him out on it because, in Northern Ohio, he supposedly panders. He's a super leftist, but he also supposedly claims he's hooked in with big labor, so he's for the little guy, and so he basically gets all the auto worker votes and the vote and the built-in vote of Northern State, and that's how he maintains his seat. But he's a piece of crap.
Well, the auto workers, I don't think will be happy for him now.
Well, but you know what? But here's the thing: when he runs for re-election or he runs whatever, he's just going to say blame Ford. Sure. I mean, his argument's going to be. I don't know what he's going to do, and I don't even know. I didn't know the story, but I know what he will do. I mean, like I know his MO. He will basically be like, Ford sucks, big companies suck, everything sucks. You're a victim, and I'm responsible, and my party's not responsible for any of the reasons why people flee.
And ultimately, it's going to be Trump's fault anyway.
Yeah.
It's
Trump's fault.
Oh, bingo.
And here's something. Again, no one listening to this podcast that doesn't live in Ohio cares about Sherrod Brown, but this is going to come as a shock to a lot of people listening to this podcast. Ohio is not a cheap place to live. We have some of the highest taxes here that you can have if you exclude California, New Jersey, and California. Like our taxes here are very high. Our state taxes, our payroll tax, some of the payroll stuff. Your property taxes. Ohio is an expensive place, and there's a reason why a lot of businesses leave Ohio. And there's a reason why, and it's not all even people that have wealth. It's not like, they're snowbirds and they're tired of the snow and they move to Florida. No, there's a lot of them that'll move to Tennessee because the taxes here are just killing them. Ohio is not a tax-friendly state. And our governor, Mike DeWine, who's going to be meeting with Joe Biden here shortly, is anti-gun. And, if the communists... If for some reason they're able to pass let's say they repeal the Second Amendment, like they're just like, we repealed it. and you're depending on your governor wherever in the state you live, because that's what it'll come down to. Like if you're the governor of Tennessee, if you lived in Tennessee, I would believe that your politicians would defend you against the federal government. Mike DeWine, the governor of Ohio, is not going to be my friend to defend the armory here.
Oh no,
we would have to move the armory probably.
Probably, yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, Illinois is no friend to gun owners either. You know, you know what's absolutely crazy is that horrible tragedy. I'm tongue tied today. Out in Colorado yesterday, it was like maybe 8 to 10 hours. Other than Fox, the mainstream media liberal stations would not release the shooter's name. They would not post it.
Well, how long was the how soon after did Fox release the name? Because here's the thing: like that shooting happened, I didn't know that it happened. Like
I want to say Fox released the name an hour after they showed him walking out with a bloody leg in custody.
Oh wow! Because I know everybody else. I mean, I've looked at the analysis of the coverage, and everybody else basically said, and all these blue checkmark people basically said he was a white supremacist, and this is, a white person that shot all this, and all of a sudden they had to walk it back. So
one weekend here in Chicago area, we had 56 people shot. I believe there were 14 killed. You didn't hear a word out of the media or the Democrats about gun control.
Well,
but
do you know how they do that with statistics?
No.
You've heard that phrase, lies, damn lies, and statistics. So there were 10 people shot in Colorado, including a police officer. And, it looks like he was laying in wait for the police officer. And, that's causing – I mean, this has been a growing trend for a while. Police officers are starting to realize that, how they respond to active shooters is changing because the active shooters are now changing their tactics. So, but I digress. But the media is saying like there's been, I don't know, 7 mass shootings so far in 2021. And whether you want to define a mass shooting as, I don't know if it's 3 people or 4 people. But the thing is, the reason they like to define it that way is if you bring it down to 2 people or 3 people, I think it's more than 4 people, 2 or 3 people, it encompasses almost all of the shootings that take place in, say, Chicago. And you will notice and if you bring it down to 2 to 3, the demographic makeup of the shooters changes drastically.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's not a good point. It's a statistical fact.
No, I mean it's what you're making is a good point. I never looked at it that way.
3 people shot on a street corner because some dopers are arguing about it is not a mass shooting, but 4 people shot at a boutique corner store in some in suburbia is a national tragedy.
The narrative.
Pretty harsh analysis there.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
And,
well, what were the bad ones? Atlanta and now Boulder, Colorado.
Well, the Atlanta one is the thing is because like Atlanta happened and I had kind of missed that one as well. But the Atlanta one is really interesting because it's like, okay, the media, as a matter of fact, until the Colorado shooting happened, the argument was that the shootings in Atlanta were white supremacy and anti-Asian stuff. I mean, like even though the police down there and the shooter have said it wasn't racially motivated, the police do not believe it was racially motivated. So far they're not charging the guy with racial or ethnic hate crimes of any kind. Apparently, the guy down in Atlanta is, he's a sex fiend. I mean, I hate to say it like that. I mean, I'm not trying to be a dick face about it.
Well, that's what he's claiming himself.
Well,
right.
It's not even. I mean, he's been in therapy. Like he had to go to these rehab centers, and like there's testimony from people that he would be at the rehab center, the inpatient treatment facility, and he would sneak out at night and go to these Jack Shacks. And, and he just was so tempted, he just couldn't. So he started fixating on the Jack Shacks. And what I find interesting is, in this whole story, is nobody's talking about human trafficking here.
Has that been proven?
Okay, I'm willing to die on the hill that when you're talking about the AMPs, Asian massage parlors, aka Jack Shacks, you are balls deep in the human trafficking trade. Because I know that business quite well. And they didn't want to go anywhere near that shit. Because is this month, is it Women's History Month or something, or Women's
Equal Pay Month?
Or but it's something, right? Like, is it March Women's something month?
Yeah,
I guess I don't know.
Yeah, and this guy, it's like, it's not a bunch of dudes in these Jack Shacks. It's women, and here's the thing: not all these women. Okay, all right. So let's talk about human trafficking for a minute, which mostly means women. There's exceptions. Mostly means women. If we were the 538 podcast, a bunch of liberals, and we were talking about prostitution and human trafficking and that entire scene, if there are women working in Jack Shacks, they're choosing to work in it, the liberal would say that society is forcing them to do that, or they're victims, or they're being coerced, or it's still somehow not their fault, because that's the argument for somehow it's my fault that some woman's on a street corner turning tricks, right? Because I'm a white male, and apparently somehow I've done something or I'm responsible. But it's interesting. This guy, Mr. Jack Shack shooter, running around the spree killer, running around shooting all these places, literally in human trafficking locations. The phrase human trafficking does not come up. Prostitution does not come up. Like, okay, here's some questions. Okay, all right. So this happened until the Colorado shooting. Until that happened, they were spinning this stuff. This is Donald Trump's fault, because Donald Trump said China virus. It's like, okay, well, I hate to be a dick face again here, and my knowledge bore this out to be true, and there's going to be exceptions, but generally speaking, Jack Shacks and Amps, Asian massage parlors, are not populated by Chinese people. They tend to be populated by Thai, Filipino, and Korean people. Additionally, which turned out to be the case, the victims. Additionally, a guy who supposedly is anti-Asian is running around as a spree killer, driving a Kia, a Hyundai Kia. Okay, so now wait a minute. Some people listening to me might think I'm being pedantic here. Okay, but we are all old enough that in the 70s and 80s, the Second World War wasn't that long before that. And it was nothing to run into somebody, especially a Jew, but even a vet from World War II, it'd be like, I am never driving a fucking Mercedes. I am never buying a Japanese car. And it had nothing to do with Buy America, and it was a big fuck you for World War II. So now they were trying, this had gotten so out of control. Somehow this is Donald Trump's fault. And this has something to do with China. And they're not talking about the international sex trade. Like, I would be curious. I would be real curious. Any of these women that are in these Jack Shacks, some of them were foreign nationals or had immigrated, or were they in the U.S. legally? Some of them may have been. They all may have been. But here's another thing that happens in the sex trafficking business. Did those women have access to their passports? Most of them don't. Did those women go home to their apartment with their boyfriends, or are they all stacked up, 15 girls deep in bunk beds in some little apartment somewhere because they're basically prisoners. Again, this is not breaking news from the John 911 podcast. Anybody that has any experience with the sex trade or Vice or any of this stuff knows this. CNN was running news crews around all of this entire industry for days and days and days and never asked a single question. Who are these girls? Why are they here? What is this business? What does this mean? Why does a sex addict attack a massage business? Because, apparently, we all know this guy didn't attack the hospital because he wasn't getting relief for his aching back.
Yeah.
And the only thing that got them off this story, because it was getting worse and worse and worse and worse, was the shooting in Colorado. Because, newsflash, everybody, Atlanta is probably the number one market for human trafficking girls in the United States right now. It's bigger in New York. It's bigger in Chicago. Might be bigger in LA. Probably is. Nobody said boo about any of it.
Well, they're also pushing another narrative today, which I found very interesting, and actually, it go right away as soon as a shooting happened, ban assault weapons, ban ARs, ban this, ban that. Well, there was a Democrat senator today, the lady from New York, Hillebrand. She said, yeah, Kristen Hillebrand, is that her name?
Yeah,
she's a
psychopath. She's a sociopath.
Well, she was on the news today, and she said that she was asked, "Do you think now they could get the 60 votes in the Senate for gun control legislation to pass?" And she said it might look good because the NRA filed for bankruptcy. They have no more juice. So because the Republican senators aren't getting any, mailings or flyers or donations from them now, they might decide to cross over and join us.
Well, she's making up complete bullshit. So first of all, let's back up here. Who's Kirsten Gillibrand?
I don't know.
She is. Well, I'll tell you, she is. You remember? She ran for president for 5 minutes when she she basically got zero traction and pulled out of the race. She got her start. She was a state level politician in New York State. She was from upstate New York. Okay. When Hillary Clinton resigned her seat as senator, the carpetbagging senator from New York, because she's, not from New York, to join the Obama administration as Secretary of State, she had to give up her Senate seat. Kirsten Gillibrand was appointed to take her seat. Kirsten Gillibrand ran for re-election and ran up there as a moderate Democrat, pro-gun moderate Democrat, because her constituency isn't in Manhattan. Her constituency is up in Buffalo. And that was literally that was her thing. She's not this crazy Democrat. She's a moderate Democrat. She's not anti-gun. As a matter of fact, she had she probably had an A- or B+ rating from the NRA. And then when she ran for national office, when she tried to run a cycle ago, she turned into, all of a sudden, she's like, I've always been against guns, and I've always been against this, and always been against that. And it was like, well, wait a minute, you're a psycho. Like, what is this shit? And because she's so inauthentic that no one can believe a word that comes out of her mouth. So now you're telling me she got on TV and she's claiming, well, this might happen because the NRA is having problems. And it's like, well, the NRA doesn't really stop this kind of stuff.
That's exactly what she said.
Well, that's the liberals. The liberals want to believe that the NRA is the reason that gun control thinks they don't get what they want. The reason they don't get what they want is because the people that are supporting the NRA are very active voters. They are very politically involved, and they do shit like call their senators and call their congressmen and drive around with bumper stickers on their trucks saying, mole on lobby. I mean, she's just making bullshit up to be on TV.
That's what I sort of thought, and her whole debate basically was how the NRA filed bankruptcy, so they have no juice whatsoever.
Whatever.
That's the NRA's probably pretty weak right now. I think that'd be a fair statement.
I agree that the NRA is weak, but it has nothing to do with them filing bankruptcy. The NRA is weak because of their own internal politics, and that's been brewing for a while.
Yeah, but the bankruptcy is a symptom of it. But okay, let's talk about this for a minute. So the Attorney General from the state of New York, the woman, I can't remember her name, she has gone after the NRA. And the reason she's gone after the NRA is, if I understand it correctly, is because Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, U.S. Marine Corps, retired, was the president of the NRA for a term, and he discovered financial oddities. And he didn't just want to sit back and say, well, Wayne's been here forever, let's go ahead and let this slide. They made Wayne LaPierre's wife has a nonprofit, and the NRA donated a bunch of money to Wayne LaPierre's wife, her nonprofit, which I'm sure she draws a salary from. She may be the only employee. Oh, how great is that? And, money for all this, money for clothes, and, money for this stuff. Wayne LaPierre, do you know Wayne LaPierre has a retirement? He gets a pension, when he decides to retire from the NRA. It's in his paperwork, in his contract. When he decides to finally retire, he gets $1 million a year every year for the rest of his life.
I did not know that.
Yeah, nobody knows that.
That's a nice.
And here's
the
thing:
nice retirement.
That's $1 million a year. Jack Welch didn't get that from GE. Just saying.
Yeah. Maybe it's close to some. It might be close to some government employees, but
So let's talk. So there was a big kerfuffle at the NRA show in Indianapolis, and they basically Wayne LaPierre won. Oliver North lost. He was kicked out of the NRA because Wayne LaPierre basically controls the board, because the board has so many people on it that the board can't really do anything because it's too diluted. And all this out. And they really caused a big break with the public and the NRA. And a major leader of this break with the public was Mac from the Military Arms Channel. Tim Harmison. He documented all of this. He warned people. He was figuring out what was going on with the NRA, to his credit. And there were a lot of people that the first they heard there were these problems came from Tim at the Military Arms Channel. We don't know Tim. We have never talked to Tim. We don't have a relationship with Tim. But this will come up again in a little bit. So this all comes public. So now, since it's public, the Attorney General from the state of New York, this woman, she's decided she's going after the NRA. And she's going through their books. It's a criminal investigation. Or have they behaved ethically, and have they behaved legally as far as how their corporate structure is supposed to be done? Because the NRA, I believe, was incorporated in New York in 1871, and it's where it's always been. So to fight against this attack and to go through all their stuff, the NRA has declared bankruptcy, because there's also this other stuff that's come out that Lieutenant Colonel North found with this law firm and all this money, $40 million. It's crazy. The NRA is out of control. But here's a clue. The Attorney General from the state of New York, she is doing a criminal investigation against the NRA. But she has not named, last I checked, Wayne LaPierre as a target of this investigation. You know why that is? Because she's not interested in getting Wayne LaPierre. She's interested in getting the NRA. Because most corporations, what they would do is, our CEO has been caught with his hands in a cookie jar, and so we are going to fire him. and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and we'll never do this again, and we have a new board and new people and whatever, and when we're going to go forward and progress. Well, she's not interested in that. If she went after Wayne, they could jettison Wayne and kind of it could, proceed there. But she's not interested in going after Wayne. She's interested in destroying the NRA. And they declared bankruptcy to try to shield themselves from litigation and they go through their records.
Why don't they just do a change of venue and move to a different state?
They're moving to Texas.
Okay.
But here's the thing, okay? And in bankruptcy court, here's a perfect example. Did you know that it's in American life, it's been proven only twice is time travel possible. Einstein and his theory of relativity has proven that time travel is possible. Through the machinations of all his mathematical, calculations. We know that's theoretically possible. The other one is a bankruptcy judge, a federal judge or a bankruptcy judge, especially in a bankruptcy. So you can declare bankruptcy, you can write stuff off, you can do all this other kind of stuff, but the courts do not like it if you are doing shit in anticipation of declaring bankruptcy and you're wasting money. They literally have the ability to go back into time and undo shit you thought you had done, like you bought stuff, you sold stuff. We sold these assets off. We don't even own these anymore. 2 years later, a bankruptcy judge reaches back and claws all that shit back, and they're like, nah, baba, nah, that shit stays here with me until we decide that. Yeah, the NRA is in big trouble because they're not going to be able to hide too much from a judge. And so, Kristen Gillibrand is right in that sense.
Well, in all fairness, should they be able to hide it?
No, that's the problem.
I mean, sometimes you have to be held accountable for your actions, and I hate to say that, being a life member of the NRA, but the truth is, sometimes the chickens come home to roost, and you gotta pay for your actions, and if they get hosed over it, they get hosed. It is what it is.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand, and you know this, Freeze, because you've been in the game a long time. Wayne LaPierre is not the president of the NRA.
No.
And they're like, well, wait a minute, how does he run the NRA? Because what they do is he's the executive vice president. So basically, he's like the chief operating officer. He's like the executive. He's like the XO of the ship. Like, let's use a naval analogy. The captain is. Captains come and go, but the XO runs the ship day to day.
Okay, it's kind of like the head of the CIA. The head of the CIA is a political appointee. The guy that's really in charge is his number 2 man.
Mm-hmm. You could make that argument. You certainly could. I mean, that's a reference to the Goslings over there in the CIA. If you know anything about the CIA, you know what I'm talking about. But what happened was, like in the 70s. There would always be a new, like Charlton Heston was the president of the NRA. Like Charlton Heston up there, and he held up the big, and he held up the flintlock. He should have held up an AR. He held up a flintlock from my cold dead hands. Well, at that point, he had a very strong position in the NRA because he was a very well-respected person. But at some point in the future, I think during the Clinton administration, is basically when, the NRA had suffered a lot. There had been a lot of anti-gun successes, and Wayne LaPierre, basically from inside the NRA, started exercising control. And to his credit, did a lot of things, to make the NRA powerful and successful. But also, over time, absolute power tends to corrupt absolutely. And, he's gotten to have more and more money, more and more power, less and less accountability, and surprise, he's got $1 million a year retirement parachute waiting for him. Oh, he's got this little side chick apartment in Fairfax for his booty calls, and the plane trips to Italy, and I'm sure we were there for Beretta, and the plane trips to the Bahamas. Well, I'm sure we were sport fishing. Oh, and then the plane trips, all the shit to Dallas. You know, it's like, well, George Bush was there. I mean, you know what I mean? Like it never stops with this guy. And yeah, I mean, like his clothing budget is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is interesting for a guy you never see on television. Well, now wait a minute. You're like, wait a minute. Rachel Maddow's on TV 5 days a week. I'm sure she's got a pretty hefty clothing budget.
Yeah, one black dress.
Johnny Carson was on TV 5 nights a week. He had a very healthy clothing budget. Where does Wayne LaPierre need to wear a suit all the time? A $50,000 suit. What does he do? What he does is he fucks everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, he must be good at it.
Mm-hmm. He was good. Wayne LaPierre was good a long time ago, and his time to leave the NRA was a long time ago. And honestly, he's probably going to destroy the NRA. I think the NRA's. I could be wrong, but I think the NRA is probably going to be destroyed. I mean, they moved to Texas and whatever, and yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, it'll be nothing.
Well, I thought you would find that story interesting.
Yeah. You know, that's Well, you know what's really interesting? If we're going to talk about some of this stuff, and I know it's not like you, Danny. You and I were talking about this off pod, like in the group chat, but you know, there's all these stories, like the story of the woman who's she was hired to be the new managing editor of Teen Vogue, and then there was all this drama again because she apparently was saying shit about Asians. She's a black woman. Apparently, she said shit about Asian people on Twitter, and when she was 17, and now you know, she's got this job, and people have searched her Twitter. You know, I don't know how old she is now. She's in her maybe mid-20s. She's a young girl. Like Teen Vogue, like she's not 50, right? I mean, she's not going to be a 50-year-old woman around Teen Vogue. And she's lost her job. And the argument I was making to you, Danny, was it's like, why on earth would anybody even use Twitter at this point? Like, you know, if you say something on Twitter, like, okay, like we're on the John 1911 podcast and we have the John 1911 website. I mean, we're public people, especially me. Like, I express opinions and I write them, and I have to be able to back them up. And I have to be held responsible for them 5 years from now. 17-year-old, like if 17-year-old Marky or 15-year-old Marky was on Twitter saying something stupid, you know, it would 50-year-old Marky, like, would I be run out of the gun industry? Would I don't know, would I lose a job? It's like, why? Yeah, I predicted a long time ago, I think more and more people are going to realize that the ultimate expression of somebody who is like rich and successful, like I think a day is going to come when like the next Paris Hilton doesn't have a social media account at all. Like,
so, do you want to know why 50-year-old Marky has not been fired from John1911.com?
Because you don't have access. You don't have the password.
No, yeah. Okay, valid point. No, the reason why 17-year-old Marky hasn't gotten 50-year-old Marky fired is because 50-year-old Marky owns the business.
Well, you know, I mean,
I mean,
yeah, a majority of one.
No, I mean, look, seriously. In all fairness, when you're a 17-year-old, you're stupid and you do stupid things. Everyone has and everyone does, and 17-year-olds will continue to do stupid things as long as there are 17-year-olds. With that being said, in this day of counterculture, everyone's being held accountable for their 17-year-old stupid self. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing. But, you know, it's like, when does it end?
Here, you know what? Here's an example. Like, think about this for a minute. So, like, you know, the John 1911 Armory, the gun range, you know, we have relationships with various police departments. I mean, you know, we're a certain segment of society, right? So let's talk about 18-year-old Marky for a minute. I'm going to tell a story I don't think you've ever heard this story, Freeze. And it's not like a major story, but it was an example of something that I did when I was 18 that was young and dumb. And if it had happened on Twitter, it could hurt me today. So 18 years old, and I'm with some friends, and we're 18. We're able to get into it was like a club or something. Like I don't know like what how we got in. Like like maybe they had like 18 and up nine. I can't remember what it was. But we're leaving. We're young, we're broke. You know what I mean? Like we have no money. Like we
Yeah.
all drive. We're all piling like some shitty car. Like girls didn't. Nobody know. It's like we're going to the club. Then like we left the club. A bunch of guys go to the club and like nothing happens, and a bunch of guys leave the club because we were losers. And so it's like like 2:30, and so everybody's piling out this club, hundreds of people, and there's a bunch of these rent-a-cops, out because it's a college area and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know, this guy, he was a rent-a-cop, and we're just walking. I don't even remember what he said, but he barked something to a bunch of people, and I literally had my back to him walking away, and I wasn't even close to him, and I mouthed something back like, "Yeah, whatever, rent a cop." You know what I mean? I was just like, because he's not a real cop. He's a whatever, and it's just I'm a cocky kid, and I'm walking away, and all of a sudden he's like, "Hey, you, come here." Of course, now I'm like, "Oh fuck," and I turn around, come up. He gets right in my face, and I'm looking at him, and he is some kind of rent-a-cop, but apparently in this town, the rent-a-cops are real cops. And he had a real badge, and he had a real gun, and he had a real radio, and he was going to let me know who was boss. And 18-year-old Marky, if that was on Twitter, I mean, I'm ashamed. That moment, I'm ashamed of it now. I'd kick my own ass. But you know what? Luckily, that happened in a dark parking lot on a Saturday night 30 some years ago. It's not on Twitter for everybody to see, and like nobody can grow, nobody can expand their horizons, nobody can forget, nobody can forgive, nobody can apologize. Everything is frozen in time, and it's a giant gotcha game. Oh yeah, well you did this, and it's like, oh fuck. Why would anybody, like, people that get on these social media platforms and they're private individuals, they don't realize how much their ass is hanging in the breeze. And I can't help but wonder if Jack Dorsey and some of these douchebags at some of these social media companies, if they're like, man, how many people can have their lives ruined by something that they said on social media 3, 4, 5, 8, 10 years ago, and it not affect our business?
Well, aren't you glad that there wasn't social media 30 years ago?
Well, you know what? The thing is, it could go both ways because Freeze, this is also true for Freeze. Look, if there were cell phone cameras from when Freeze and I were, say, 14 to 25, we would be fucking legends. The shit that we did. I mean, like, just the crazy. I mean, like, it would be, people would not believe. I mean, people today, especially like today's society, is all about, we should have less harm. Like Freeze, remember the story you told me? You were buddies and you're going down. I'm not going to name the road. Maybe I'll name the road. Is it Neeb? And you guys are, like you're high school. And you're going up and down that road, and I've been up and down that road, and there's this giant hill, and you guys go airborne and coming up into a T intersection.
Yeah.
And like that kind of stuff, like that was stuff literally out of a TV show. Like it's the Fall Guy crazy.
Look, this was like Dukes of Hazzard type shit. I mean, it really was. It was amazing that we're both still alive today.
Mm-hmm.
And who did you hurt for it, though, if you really think about it? Put it in perspective.
Who did I what?
Who did you hurt doing those crazy things? No one. You had fun as kids.
Well, we put a little paint on a 1966 Super Sport Chevelle.
Well, yeah.
but other than that, no, we didn't hurt anyone.
That's what I mean. And now it was today's social media. Oh my God! If anybody had photos of it or this or that, the cops would have came and got you. This that. It's like people can't wait to rat you out in some instances.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's kind of a shame, and I don't think society's going to change, but I
It's gonna get
think
worse.
well, but I think also people are going to start. I think look, when in 1965 or 1960, people ran around and they assumed like Back to the Future, with Michael J. Fox and the DeLorean, 88 miles an hour and going through time, right? And they go to what I don't know what's 2012 and or like what the year 20, they go ahead in time. And it's like people thought there was going to be flying cars and there's going to be all this, things are going to be a certain way. I think there's been a lot of assumptions about how things are going to be in the future regarding the internet and people's behavior. And I'm not so certain that all that's going to play out to be true. I do wonder, I truly do. I think social media can make people mentally ill. I think a little bit. I don't think enough to have your rights curtailed, but I really do. I think there's a lot of areas that we can look at.
Excuse me.
I can't even imagine what it's like right now for like a 13-year-old girl. Like these little girls, there's no way that it's not screwing these kids up.
Oh no, I agree with you. I mean, I think that there's a lot of peer pressure. Like growing up, there was always been peer pressure, but now with social media, the peer pressure I think for like school kids is exponentially worse than it was 30, 40 years ago.
It must be. I've seen people that they get on Twitter, and I'm like, dude, you need to get off Twitter. But, and it's just like,
They
get the
can't.
fuck off of it. It's
They're addicted.
well, but they eventually, I've seen people get off of it, and they're better. Like I'm so much better now. It's like, yeah,
Well, ask yourself one thing: how many girls or boys, let's say age 14 to 17, do you not see constantly with their phone as an appendage?
we all do.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, you're the resident caveman. So
Oh,
but like
thanks.
look, I'm not going to sit here and bullshit you. Look, we run the John 1911. We run the John 1911. Social media site thing, all that stuff, and someone's got to monitor that. Got to have access to the apps and to the feeds and to the
Yep.
websites and to the comments. Like there was a time that Freeze had to constantly be on Facebook because we had so many people coming on Facebook. They would post crazy bullshit comments.
Oh, I'm
And
so
if
glad. I'm
yeah,
so
and
glad I'm past that.
yeah, and if we, and but like I don't mean like you guys suck. I mean like people would like threaten Barack Obama.
Oh yeah.
And it's like delete ban, delete ban, delete. Because like here's the thing: if you let that shit sit there for 3 days, at what point, or if you just ignore, I don't read the comments. At what point are you culpable? At
Yeah.
what point are you like, well, you're letting these people organize an attack against somebody? It
No,
got to be, it was bad.
Yeah, we had very, very strict rules, and there was a no tolerance policy for a lot of these rules.
We
And
have to have.
and Freeze, because he works third shift. If I was up during the day, I could keep stuff running, and then he would run it. He would run it at night, and he could pull that phone out of his pocket, and he could be like, "Oh shit, delete that guy," or he'd send me a message, "Hey, this guy over here, I'm going to probably have to ban this guy," and I'd be like, "Oh fuck yeah, I see, it's going to happen,"
Yeah.
and and you
Well,
would,
I
if you
guess I'm
saw
not.
but if you
I
saw
guess I'm not
Freeze.
social media. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah,
I'm
but if
sorry.
you saw Freeze, you'd be like, heck, he's got that phone fucking taped to his ass all the time. It's like, well, you asked
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
I think that don't have the phone taped to my ass constantly or my ear, because after being on call for 24, 7, 32 straight years, you sort of want to get away from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but look, I'm trying to do that more as well because, like, I was over at a Shooter Supply, the gun store in Loveland yesterday, Freeze, and I walked into, I had to take care of some paperwork on some stuff, and I walked in, and he's the owner. He's like, got this look on his face, and I'm like, oh man, it's just not a good time. He's like, man, I've been on the phone with the FBI for an hour and a half. I'm like, for what? He's like, we're crazy busy because of what Biden said. And I'm like, what did Biden say? Like, I had missed the whole thing because I was out driving a Porsche. And, it was kind of like, well, you know what? I'd rather been driving a Porsche. I'll deal with Biden when I get back to the office. You know what I mean? Like, Biden's going to be Biden. And it's like, you know what? Commies are going to commie. And, people are going to confiscate the guns, they're going to confiscate the guns. And you know what? We're going to fight to stop them. And I'm not going to be miserable doing it. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to win, and I'm going to be happy. I'm not going to be miserable and win. I'm going to be happy and win. Like, fuck them. Like, whatever.
Well, that's. I'm glad you touched on that, because that's the whole liberals' MO is confiscation. Ding the Second Amendment as many types and ways as you can, and it's the same old song and dance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they, like, again, not to do a Jen Psaki and circle back. I'll have to circle back on you here, but supposedly they care about women. Supposedly they care about exploiting women and white men dominating or whatever. I don't know how you even say it, but it's like they were literally all standing in front of these Jack Shacks, and not a single one of them dared to broach the question, what's going on here? Why are there a bunch of dead girls from Korea in this building? I mean, why is a sex addict coming here shooting up the place? Did he have a bad back? Is he there for the neck massage? Like, what's going on here?
Acupuncture.
Mm-hmm. Acupuncture. Yeah, sticking something. But you know what I mean? It's like, but all these people, a lot of the point that Danny's making is a lot of this is performative bullshit. And that's what a lot of Twitter is. It's like, like these guys, like you see a Twitter or you see a social media account, my pronouns are he, him. It's like, oh, why? Okay, I don't care. Like, all right. Like, I mean, this isn't, like, I've known more drag queens and transsexuals, like, in real life than most people. Never had these problems. If a woman comes dressed to you as a woman, and they want to be a woman, even if they biologically there's something under there that you know what? Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. I'm not going to insult people. As a matter of fact, a lot of them I like them. A lot of people that choose to do stuff like that, they've had to give it a lot of thought, and I respect people that think out their positions, as opposed to Senator Sherrod Brown, who just talks in bumper stickers. And it's like a lot of this is performative because it's like, oh, if you don't put your he, him, she, her, or all this kind of stuff on your profile, you're a bigot now. So it's like you have to. If you don't do it, they come after you.
Well, it's interesting when you're talking about pronouns. I had to fill out a bunch of medical forms and crap lately. And on one of the medical forms, it actually asked me what my preferred pronoun was. Believe it or not. And,
that's got to be a new thing. The pronoun thing just popped up, right?
It is. It's a fairly new thing. So you know what my preferred pronoun is?
No, what?
Mister.
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 Oh, I thought it would have been anaconda or something.
No. It's just like, the whole preferred pronoun thing is just fucking stupid.
I'd be putting down. You can call me Sweet Daddy Jones. I mean, it's like, and like, I guess if you get down to it, it's like everybody's want to fuck with everybody. It's like, okay, if I don't have if I had I've never actually had a personal social media account, but like if if you don't see a he, him, or a, I don't know, a she, her, or whatever, you got to come like beat down my door and come after me. It's like, okay, I mean, look, you do you. Half the problems in the world stem from the idea of fucking with each other. You know, if people just wouldn't fuck with each other, we wouldn't have half the problems we have. It's like, and I'll never forget this. And I've told this before. I remember there was a story. It was out of California, and it was about the whole gay marriage thing. I don't have a problem with gay marriage. I really don't. And so what happened, but hold on, if that pisses you off, please bear with me. I have a story. There was a small church, a small parish in California, and the archbishop, which is an honor for the parish, for the archbishop himself to show up on a Sunday, and the archbishop is coming here to perform mass. And it's kind of a nice big deal. It's a way for the parish to see the big man. You know what I mean? Like, it's a big deal. And they knew he was coming. And what had happened was a bunch of these pro-gay marriage folks had gone into the church, and a church they don't attend, they're not members of, they're not Catholic, they're probably not even religious. They'd gone there with the express purpose to disrupt the service and complain about gay marriage in the church. And it was like, well, now wait a minute. Okay, I have no problem with the gay people wanting to get gay married. If you're against gay marriage, don't get gay married. On the other hand, don't be going into this church and fucking with these people when they are not bothering you one bit. You know, it's like, quit fucking with each other. That's half the problem here. Is a lot of especially with the left today, and the right's been doing some of it as well. Everybody, it's a way to get up. It's a way to up your game and up your creds, is to try to tear somebody else down or go fuck with somebody. And it's like, you know, I want to kick all your fucking asses.
Well,
I kind of have an idea of, I'm going to go to the hardware store and I'm going to buy an axe handle and I'm going to start whooping people's asses on both sides of this. You know, quit fucking with each other.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I saw a video. This was a while ago, well over a year ago. Could have been longer. And there's a restaurant. I don't remember what town or city it is, but they sell wild game. You know, elk, deer, antelope, whatnot.
For a minute, I thought you were talking about the restaurant that got in trouble for selling the horse. Okay.
No.
All right.
So anyway, there's all these vegan people out there protesting this restaurant. And they've got their signs, you know, meat is murder and all this crazy shit, you know, and it's 99% women. And they're up there protesting this restaurant, and the restaurant's, they don't really give a shit. Hell, they're slaughtering animals in the windows in front of everyone for them to watch. And this guy's interviewing him, and he brought up a very valid point. Because he's talking to these people about their, you know, vegan beliefs and how killing animals is horrible and all that stuff. And then he interviewed 3 different women. And he asked them all the same question. He's just like, you know, I'm looking at your signs and I'm looking at your message. And it sounds like you could basically just transplant yourself in front of an abortion clinic and you would be anti-abortion. And not a single fucking one of them would even say, oh, sure, abortion's wrong. They all danced around. Well, we're not here to talk about abortion. We're here to... Not a single one of these vegan women would admit that abortion or killing babies is bad. And see, the problem here is they're so invested in their own core beliefs, but yet from a feminist, liberal point of view, you can't be against abortion. So... You know, it's interesting how you can be adamant about killing animals, but you can't be adamant about killing babies because of your core liberal beliefs.
It's the Gloria Steinem problem.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
Gloria Steinem is the president of NOW, the National Organization of Women. And she's I guess she's still the president of NOW. Maybe she's president emeritus at this point. Big feminist. I mean, been a feminist for a long time, like 30 years. Like been around.
Yeah, forever. Forever.
And like her bona fides as far as like feminism is like they're unimpeachable. And then all the shit came out about Bill Clinton. And she wasn't ready to die on those principles. She basically was like, well, I got to vote for Bill. It's like, all right, I got to support Bill. I still, and she made all these excuses. So, well, I'm not. This isn't about that. This is, and it's like, okay, I understand the idea. I understand the idea of triangulation, and I understand the idea of like a a vote for the lesser of two evils. I mean, I understand all of that, but also understand hypocrisy is real. Hypocrisy is the price that vice pays to virtue. And if you want to change the world, the first thing you need to do is you need to change yourself. And I think a lot of people are super motivated to go out and rage against others because it's easier than looking in yourself. It's like, I posted this thing on social media because obviously it's like, they're going to come and take the guns and ban all the guns. And I made a comment. I'm like, look, I'm 50 years old. I'm going to be 50 this year. I've had a great life. And you know what? I'm not the Bundys. I'm not, I don't know, like insert your favorite crazy wacko person.
Ruby Ridge.
I'm not, that's a little bit different. They kind of set him up. But, I'm not going to go out and I'm not going to fight my government. I'm not going to, I'm friends with law enforcement. I support law enforcement. I support law enforcement every day. I'm not going to fight law enforcement. You know what I mean? I'm not, I don't want to hurt my friends. And even if it's law enforcement, if they do come for me and it's not my friends, it's like, how am I supposed to tell they're not my friends? They have the same uniform. You know what the reality is? What I'm going to do is I'm basically going to be like, well, you're going to have to come here in person. You're going to have to look me in my face and you're going to have to tell me I'm a criminal and you're going to have to put me in jail. Now, I'm not going to resist. I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to fight the government. But you know what? Our forefathers gave up a lot for our rights. Jail is not that hard. And it's, at some point you have to make a choice as a person as to what you're going to stand up for. Guys understand this idea. The idea, like, if you're out in the world and there's a big bad dude out there and, he's bigger than you and he's badder than you and he's everything more than you, but he's terrible. And he's doing something awful. And it's you and him. And you're probably going to lose. You're going to spend the rest of your life turning tail on that? And you just be like, well, I guess I'm going to lose today. But this is happening.
Yeah.
Well, that brings up a question that was, I actually caught the tail end of it on TV. They were talking about the Colorado shootings. And one guy interviewed on TV, he said, if Colorado wasn't so bad with obtaining a concealed carry permit, there might have been a different income. You would have thought that he just killed the Pope when he said that. It was ridiculous, the media, how they were aghast that he would say something like that.
Have you seen somebody pretty smart made a list of all the gun laws that this person in Colorado violated? Because they're all apparently the city that this took place in, you cannot allowed to have certain things. You're not allowed to have magazines. It was all kinds of stuff. Brandishing guns in public. Like, this person violated 6 or 7 major gun laws to do, and it's not even counting murder. It was gun laws. And it's like, yeah, that shit didn't work, did it? like even it's like all this is it's just performative. It's he, him, she, her, performative internet, Twitter bullshit, and it's like it's not real. This guy was mentally ill, and surprise, people knew he was mentally ill, and it used to be in the old days Like when this kid, like everyone's like this person in Colorado. You're hearing these stories from high school where it's like, oh yeah, he did this and he did that. He would get off the deep end on this, and then he punched people. And it used to be in the 70s and in the 60s and the 50s. Little Johnny, people starting to see little Johnny's having some issues. Little Johnny doesn't get to go to the regular school anymore. Little Johnny gets diverted to another school, to another place. They would identify these people as they would identify them as young as they could, and they would track them into a different direction. But we don't do that anymore because everybody's free to run around, even if they're mentally ill, and do everything they want until they catch a felony. Because what we basically do is we don't have insane asylums. We don't have inpatient mental health facilities. We use the criminal justice system as a revolving door for mental health until they catch a felony and they end up into the federal penitentiary or death row. We've done that since the 70s. And again, seeing nobody's talking about it. What do you mean he went in and passed a background check, he got a gun, and 6 days later? Because nobody turned him in to the loony bin, you assholes.
Yeah.
Well,
my biggest question is when the Colorado thing went down. Where was David Hogg?
trying to trademark his pillow company that the idiot didn't do in the first place.
Well, David Hogg is the guy who's famous at the school. He claimed he was in the building. It turns out I think his class, his grade or whatever is not even in that building. Is another building. But apparently, I've even heard the rumor. I don't know if it's true. So I'm not going to sue me on this one. But I've heard that he may not have even been home that day and ran the school when he heard about the shooting on the news and stepped in front of a camera.
I heard that too. Yes.
I've heard that. I don't know if that's true.
Did you hear about his pillow company?
I did.
Yeah, I'm like, this shit's not trademarked or something. It's like,
yeah, he didn't register it. So other people went and registered his brand name trademark because it wasn't registered. So now he has to, all the money that was sent for advertising, flyers, this or that, under that name now belongs to somebody else.
I mean, look, Freeze knows this. Look, we were in the t-shirt business, and that's a pretty cutthroat business. Yeah. Like, I don't think the pillow business is a walk in the park. I think this boy is like this stuff, like these garment, clothing, this kind of stuff, man. I mean, it is cutthroat, and I think he's really showing his naivety. What it is David Hogg is realizing the same thing that happened to Cindy Sheehan, and I don't want to beat a dead horse.
He's not relevant anymore.
He's not relevant anymore, and he's so desperate. He's so desperate to be in front of the cameras and try to make a career out of being David Hogg, and they don't care about him because they've got AOC now.
Oh, that's right. Oh, did you guys happen to see they were when they were talking about banning ARs on TV yesterday or whatever? They showed, and you guys might have seen this before, but they showed a AR in 223, 5.56, whatever you want to call it. Then they had a World War II 30 caliber carbine, and they asked which one will do more damage. 100% pointed to the AR. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, that doesn't shock
because that's an assault weapon. The other one is just a rifle.
Yeah,
well, you know what? But hold on. I made this point. Like, think about this for a minute. All right. We're kind of going through a schizophrenic time, and then we'll get into the gun industry stuff because we're going for a while. But we're kind of going through a schizophrenic time with gun laws in this country as far as how politicians and the ATF are looking at firearms. And here's an example. It used to be, we went through a phase in this country where guns that were below a certain size were not considered sporting. Okay? And guns, so you couldn't import them. Or there was a point system. And then there was a made-up phrase, like, assault weapon, is a made-up phrase. because it doesn't really exist because it's assault rifle for machine guns. We all know this. But see, before that we had Saturday Night Special, and the argument was Saturday Night Specials you can't have smaller and smaller guns because it was the Saturday Night Specials that were responsible for all the crime, and that's where in the late '60s and into the '70s you had all these cities passing all these gun laws. Nobody could carry guns anymore because it was banning handguns and small gun, and it was small personal-sized handguns were bad. Okay, and that we've been slowly in the '90s. We've slowly been crawling our way back out of that, starting in the late '90s or mid '90s. With CCW kind of reversing a lot of that trend. Well, now we're seeing a trend like with the ATF and AR pistols that guns that are bigger than pistols that are bigger than a certain size are now verboten, and smaller is better, not bigger. So the argument is bigger pistols are illegal are now rifles, or bigger pistols are more dangerous, where it used to be smaller pistols were more dangerous. And, if you're in this game long enough, you can see the turd bowl that a lot of this stuff circles around. And a lot of it is just arbitrary, made-up bullshit just to go after something until technology changes or things change, and then we're going in a different direction. It's that's kind of like, people that look at an AR, they know what an AR looks like. People that aren't gun people, because they've seen pictures of it. Whether it's an AR or an AK, they may not know the difference, but they kind of know what that looks like to them. You could hold up a Robinson M96 rifle, and it's neither an AR or an AK, but they would recognize it as that kind of rifle. That's about all they know, and that's bad because they've been told it's bad.
Well, it gets back to the point I made where they showed the 223 AR and a World War II, 30 caliber carbine. It's like, are people that naive?
Yeah, because they don't know. I mean, look. I mean, the 223 is an evil, terrible weapon. Or it's an AR-15 at 5.56. It's all this terrible stuff. An average male is 180 to 200 pounds. And if AR-15 is meant to shoot people, right? That's what it's for. How many states where people make that argument? You're not allowed to take your AR-15 and 223 and shoot a 200-pound deer because it's not humane. It's not ethical because there's enough power. But that's the truth.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places you can't shoot deer with a 223 because they're like, no, dude, that's really, unless you know what you're doing, and even then, you might be chasing that deer for half a day. Gonna wound that deer.
But you could shoot them with a 308, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It gets even better because some states you can freeze. How was it? Indiana had this crazy shit where it was 308 was legal, 243 was legal, but 7mm wasn't legal. Was that right? Or 260 wasn't legal.
Yeah, 260 wasn't. It was. Yeah, I mean the caliber laws in Indiana really were just made by a bunch of guys that really have no clue what they're talking about.
Yeah, they basically what they did is they took a known weapon or a known caliber and they're like, we're going to start from this point. And then they tried to expand out in one way or the other, and they didn't have a logic to justify what they were doing.
Yeah. They based everything on 30 caliber, really, Yeah. And then it was like 6.5's not legal. And it's like, why not? Because it's not 30 caliber. But is 45? It was 45-70 legal in Indiana? I'm pretty sure 338 wasn't. It's bizarre. In some cases, there are literally two calibers, above or below allowed calibers that are almost the same, except one is metric and one is inches, and one's allowed and one's not. It was crazy. Yeah.
The 45-70 is only legal if you put it in a judge pistol and fire it.
Oh, did you see that picture?
Yeah,
Oh my, Freeze! Did you see that photograph?
I did.
What a
I did.
fantastic segue!
That
Oh,
that that
I'm
gold
was
getting better.
star. So
that was a brutal picture.
tell
Yeah, it was.
because you know what? That's Freeze's favorite gun. Freeze, tell the listener what we're discussing.
So apparently, someone shoved a 4570 in the chamber of a. I don't know if it was a judge or if it was what's the Smith and Wesson,
The Smith and Wesson is the governor.
the governor. I don't know if it was a governor or a judge.
But explain what those are to people.
What
It's a revolver.
basically it's a short-barreled revolver that fires either a 45 long Colt or a 410 caliber shotgun shell.
Or 45 ACP with moon clips.
Well, yeah, okay. I guess you can use a 45 ACP with moon clips as well. That's true. Um, and they're interesting little revolvers. Some people like them, some don't. But what you cannot do with them, however, apparently, is put a 4570 down the chamber of one and try to shoot it.
You can easily see somebody who's like, it's a 45 caliber revolver. This is a 45. It's 45 cents. Yeah, it's okay. It's a multi-caliber gun. It shoots all the 45s.
Oh man,
Right? They're like, yeah, this
yeah.
shoots all the 45s. Take the 4570. Look at chambers. They're like, fantastic. And I'm surprised it didn't blow up more than it did.
No shit. I'm really surprised that that in the picture you were able to see as much of the gun as you could.
Yes.
What
I
did
We were surprised from the picture you could even tell it used to be a gun. Because it
yeah.
was like, that should have been like an atomic bomb, down to the atoms.
well,
Yeah.
how about that kid with a 12 gauge I sent you the picture of where the barrel blew?
You
I've
know
seen
what?
I've seen barrels like that though.
I never have.
I've seen barrels like that from people plugging them when they fall.
Yeah.
He was claiming, Danny sent a photograph of a guy who claimed, I think was it a 410?
20. I think it was a 20.
20 gauge, and I guess they're claiming the gun blew up mid barrel. It didn't blow up at the front, and they're claiming that a wad got stuck in the gun, and around behind it blew it up or something. Or
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
But when a shotgun shell misfires, like he's saying, where's everything go? I thought if
the
it's misfire, it's still intact within the shell.
a shotgun shell. Well, it blows out the front of the shell. The shotgun shells typically. I'm not a total expert on shotguns, but it's usually the projectile. Then behind that, so going from front to back, from muzzle end towards the shooter, it would be the projectiles, buck or ball or whatever. Then you would have the wad, which is kind of like, because it's if it's a bunch of balls, you got to make it in a solid thing. And then behind the wad, you would have the charge, right? Freeze.
Yeah. Correct.
And so maybe if you blew a shotgun, maybe if it's shorted, maybe the balls could
I mean,
roll out of
look,
the gun, but the wad stayed in.
look. There's too many variables here. Okay. Let's say hypothetically, and I don't. We don't know all the variables to this, but let's say this kid had a 20 gauge shotgun and he grabbed a shoebox full of old paper hulled shotgun shells that belonged to his grandfather. He throws a paper hull down there. It's got a bad powder charge. It fizzes. Maybe half the hull breaks off because it's dry rotted cardboard. Lodges halfway down the barrel. He sends a second one down. Boom! You've got an explosion. I mean, there could be so many variables as to why that barrel got plugged where it did, and the bottom line is once you plug a barrel and send a second one down, I mean, shotgun barrels are pretty paper thin to begin with anyway. You know.
Well, it wasn't a 2012 syndrome, but and I actually, I mean, until I see evidence, I still kind of call bullshit on it. But I just realized something. Freeze, what was the thing that the guys used to do years ago? They would take a paper a paper wadded. Maybe they probably do it with a plastic one. They would cut the shell. What would they call that? Like Rhodesia? What they call that? Like they would take a shotgun shell and they would cut it with a pocket knife.
Yeah.
What was that called? To make it like a
Basically,
ghetto slug.
yeah, basically you were making a slug.
But they had a name for it.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was called. They used to do that years and years ago. But yeah, they would cut the hull to where when you fired it, the hull would travel down the barrel with the shot load and
Yeah,
basically
so
create a slug.
the hull that's containing the projectiles and the wad behind it, would they
Yeah.
cut behind the wad, and it would function. Danny, this would come out of the barrel as a solid piece like a slug, and it was a way to ghetto slug. And of course, like dude, back in the day, like in the 70s, you would hear stories of people doing this, and I remember they would claim like they would act like you could kill an elephant doing this. Like, oh my God, you do that's illegal. Like, oh my God, that's so. Oh, you like that's it. Like it was up there with like hollow point exploding ammo.
Yeah, but do they have any? Are they probably didn't take into any consideration the stress on the metallurgy of the barrel?
Yeah, it shouldn't be that much. The
Eh,
powder is the powder is the powder. I mean, if it stays compressed, it should spike more, but probably within spec of the barrel. I doubt that would blow up a barrel. But if they goofed and maybe something's fully plugged, here's the thing: I have a hard time believing a shotgun wad by itself, even like a modern plastic one, can seal a barrel with enough pressure to cause it to rupture.
I don't disagree with you, but again, there's so many variables that could have happened. I mean, obviously, yeah, I mean, obviously, there's two facts that cannot be disputed. The first fact is that the barrel did explode. We have a picture of that.
And it
And
exploded, but it exploded more towards the shooter end,
midway, yeah,
not up at the muzzle.
yeah, it exploded. I'd say midway, about
Yeah,
halfway down or so. Okay, and the second thing you can't dispute is there was an obstruction in the barrel to cause it to explode. Those are two variables that we absolutely know. What the obstruction was, we have no clue. They're saying it was a wad. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows?
I mean the thing is, it's like you fall and you plug your barrel and then you shoot it, and you pass the buck and blame the ammo, not the shooter.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, Mark, did you ever find out how much that red Glock trainer sold for?
The FBI one, the Gen 5
Yeah,
FBI
right.
17, the 17M from the FBI sold for $3,800 before fees and transfer.
So how much is a French Glock going to sell for?
Probably $5.99 or $6.99. Glock has issued the French Army, the French D Army or whatever it's called. Their service pistol was now a Glock 17, and Glock is now going to sell in the United States a clone. I believe it's the United States, a clone of that gun with its markings on it, and that's cool. I mean, I think that's cool. It's like it's a Gen 4 Glock, which I think is the Gen 4 and up is the better Glocks. I mean, Gen 5 is probably a little better with the ambi controls, but I think it's a Gen 4. But yeah, I thought that was it's kind of cool to see Glock doing some of that kind of stuff. Like they reissued the P80, the original
Hmm.
service pistol from the Austrian Army. Now they're doing the service pistol from the French Army. I mean, Glock has been around long enough that it's no longer just this upstart plastic gun company. I mean they're legit. I mean they have a long, 50 years or 40
Hmm.
years.
Would you say Glock has 80% of governmental contracts in the United States from local all the way up through Fed?
Not anymore. I wouldn't. I think 80's high.
Is it?
It's high. It's a high number. Don't get me wrong, but I think 80% is high. Maybe 10 years ago that might have been the case, but I don't think it's the case today.
Well, because I know some of the law types that I ran around with, they were all issued Glocks.
Hmm.
And I just was wondering if it's still the case.
See, M&P made some inroads for a while, but you're starting to see the M&P fall back again. The
Well,
first
Sig's made a dent too.
Hmm.
Sig was
Yeah.
pretty successful. Their 320. Obviously, Sig is going to SIG is going to reap some rewards from it just being the Army service pistol. I mean, like SOCOM, they still run the Glocks. FBI, they run the Glocks. It's probably not 80%, but it's I think Glock is holding well, and I think the SIG is on the rise, and it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what ultimately happens to SIG. Like, I mean, like long term, like especially with these removable modules, like it'll be interesting to see a SIG 320 slap M17 M18 removable module gun with 300,000 rounds through it, and it's 30 years old, and see if it does that hold up? Like, is the sheet metal going to start cracking? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's going to be super interesting to see that, and that'll kind of help determine how people feel about these guns. I think long term, I think it'll be.
But you know what I find interesting is I was looking at Beretta 92s, and they cost more now than they did when they were issued to the government as the official sidearm.
Oh, sure, because of inflation, and honestly, the Beretta 92s they're making today, well, you know what? I'd say they're better. I mean, the Beretta 92s back in the day, they were really good guns. But today, even today, though, what they do to some of these guns, like the D-horn and some of the hand fitting on some of them, like you can really get to the deep end of the pool on a Beretta now. Where back in the day, basically it was a Beretta pizza gun in a cardboard box. Where now you can go full custom with a Beretta now, like Langdon.
I still like the
Ernie,
92.
yeah,
I really
Ernie
do.
Langdon. There's a guy. You know what? You would like this. There's a guy. His name's Ernest Langdon. Ernie Langdon, and I know Ernie. Ernie's about my age. He's a Marine. He was I think he was an embassy guard Marine. And early on, I think in IDPA, he won the IDPA national championship with a DASA Beretta 92. Because
impressive.
That's what he shot in the Marine Corps, and that was his gun. And that even today, Ernie is like LTTs or Langdon Tactical LTT. I don't remember what LTT stands for, but you should look up Ernie. He's Ernest Langdon. You'd like him, Danny. I'll tell you what, he can run a Beretta 92 like the devil.
Do you see more of the move going towards 1911s?
Yeah. I mean, certainly the 1911's making a comeback. That Wilson gun that I'm running, the EDCX-9L, it's basically a 1911 that runs like a Glock, which is amazing. Staccato's obviously on the upswing because Staccato was a race company for years, and they've decided they have new ownership, and they decided they wanted to be tactical, and they've succeeded in getting some contracts. And a lot of the cops in SWAT teams that want to run, fancier guns with better triggers have been. Once one company picks up a contract, it makes it easier, or once one department, it makes it easier for other departments to do it because they can kind of piggyback off the work to justify for their department. Because there has to be an onboarding, testing process. So yeah, you're definitely, especially the 9mm 1911. The 1911 is experiencing a major resurgence compared, 10 years ago, the 1911 was on life support. Now, 1911 guys aren't going to say that, but it was, because 10 years ago, Glock ran everything. Glock is starting to come down a little bit, and 10 years ago, if I said Glock's numbers were coming down, Glock would not get the Army service pistol contract, and SWAT teams would start buying 2011 9mm 1911s, double stack. You'd have been like, you're out of your fucking mind. That wasn't a trend line. You never know. Like, well, okay, here's a perfect example. This is an industry story, and it's a good bone to SIG, and it's so smart. I love this story. I don't much care for the gun, but I love the story. SIG is now going to host at their academy in Exeter, New Hampshire, a P365 EDC championship shoot. So you can take your pocket EDC gun, your 365, which is basically a small 320, and you can go up there and run a gun and win gold medals and be a champion.
Cool.
Like, there are people that will buy a P365 just to go up there and shoot that match.
Sure. Why not?
I mean, like,
Well, why not?
Yeah, why not? Because if you can win, and then here's the thing, and a bunch of people are going to show up that aren't going to be any good because that's the bulk of people, and you're going to connect with them as a brand, and you're going to, you're going to make them better shooters, and then you're going to have your ringers come in like, Jerry Michalik may show up with a P365. I mean, I don't think Smith would mind too much. And, it's a 365 match, so he shoots a 365. And you got a picture of Jerry Michalik shooting a 365, and Sig's going to have it on video and make it a 365 look fantastic and post it on the internet. It's a brilliant. Sig is probably the smartest weapons company in the game today. Those fools.
Plus, you got the average Joe out there with their 365 going up there, shooting, doing shitty, but that's okay. They're still out there doing it, and all of a sudden they get to talk to Jerry and get a photo op with Jerry, and you know what? Life is good.
But where they're stealing this out of a playbook. You know whose playbook they're stealing this out of, don't you?
No.
Glock. Glock started a Glock-only competition. The GSSF, the Glock Sports Shooting Foundation, and they would have Glock would run these regional matches, and you could show up with a Glock, you could shoot your Glocks. They had different categories. I think they had like bug Glocks and full-size Glocks. They may have had 45, but then also. And if you win, they give away Glocks. And if you showed up with your Glock, they'd have armorers on site. Oh, you need your gun rebuilt? Oh, you need springs? The armorers would they'd put springs in your gun. They would just do it. I think they do it for free. And it was so fantastic. And then because it was just a Glock thing, a Glock rep could show up at a local gun range. Basically, it was a gun match in a box. Open up his thing, be like with his timers and some of his targets and his logs, and be like, today we're having a GSSF match. And dudes could show up with their Glock, or they could rent a Glock from the counter, and they could shoot, and they could get scored. They could win locally in the night, or they could win how they rank nationally. And it was super cool because you could go to your neighborhood gun range and shoot a GSSF match. A sanctioned GSSF match because a Glock rep was coming in. And I guarantee you Sig's going to start doing this.
And everyone has fun.
Everyone has fun. I love this. I love it. I love it.
It's marketing genius, really. There'll be pictures all over. Look at the hundreds of people that showed up.
Now, here's the thing. I don't care who you are out there. Like, look, if you're a Glock guy, or if you're, let's choose a gun forum that's for a particular gun, because they can be, the more focused the gun, the more toxic the gun forum could be. The best thing those dudes could do is set up a come one, come all, bring your X whatever gun, let's say we're the Beretta, you bring your Beretta, and, if you don't have a Beretta, we'll give you a Beretta and have a Beretta shoot, and that's everything. That is so smart.
Yes,
I love
is.
that.
Speaking about getting a gun, I had a lady ask me if you ever picked up that 22 mag.
I have not yet, but you can tell her that just today, that red Glock you were asking about, the FBI gun?
Right.
There's actually two versions of that gun. There's the blank firing, or it's a dead gun that simulates a real gun. You can even put ammo in it, but it won't fire around. Okay? That's the 7. That would be the Glock 17. If it was a Glock 17, it would be the Glock 17P for practice. There is an even rarer gun called the Glock 17R for reset. And what this gun does is it won't fire, but every time you pull the trigger, and it's here in my hand, it resets the trigger. So you can dry fire it, not have to cycle the slide. Like a SIRT pistol.
Is that what you're holding now?
Yes, that's that click you hear. Click, click.
That's
click.
what I thought.
And it's pretty loud. It's
Well, yeah. Well, I thought we were going to make a whole pod without any dry firing.
Oh no, but I mean now I've got a Glock that I can dry fire that I don't even have to cycle the slide. And the thing is, like 1911s are fun to dry fire because it's easy that you can thumb the hammer if you need to, or it's easy to work the slide. Like it's just I don't know. I felt 1911s were much more enjoyable to dry fire because I think dry fire is so important. Glocks and some of those guns get to be a little tougher, but that's why the Glock made this gun. These are pretty uncommon, so we have both of them, and we didn't pay $3,800 for this gun. We paid probably $400 for this gun.
Nice, but you got one.
Yeah,
I know deep down you want that red one.
Well, I have them. They're both these guns I just described to you are red. They are the red version. That's gun. I've got.
Oh, I didn't know the other one was red. I did not know that.
They're both red. There's those two red guns, and then there's a blue one. There's a blue one that they make that shoots the UTM marking rounds. It's like a paint gun, but it shoots a paint bullet, and it hurts like a motherfucker. Those were, maybe we'll get one of the UTM guns just to have it. Maybe Freeze and I do a video. The only reason I could think of doing it would be Freeze and I do a video in the pit where we're shooting each other with blue marking rounds. I don't know what else we'd do.
I guarantee you I will be there for that. I'll hold the camera.
Oh, man.
I volunteer.
And what's nice with the UTM rounds is they will cycle a semi-automatic. It used to be in the old days when we used to do force-on-force with marking rounds, you basically had to use a revolver, and we used to call them, I don't know what they're really called, but we called them Code Eagle. And it was a red marking round that you would have to, like a little K-frame revolver, and, the adversary would shoot people with his little... And then, like, you'd look, like, I didn't get shot, but like, come here. Yeah, you did. You got a red mark on your chest. You're dead. And so, but they kind of hurt a little bit. But I will tell you that I have never actually been shot with a marking round in an actual force-on-force training. I came very, very close, and the guy even was convinced, like, I shot him. I'm like, dude, you didn't fucking shoot me. And they checked my body, and the bullet had skimmed my shirt, just the edge of my shirt on my left sleeve. And didn't mark I'd never taken a full hit from a full marking round in an actual training scenario because I just was that quick. I got the guy in a dropout. So
anyway, you lead a charmed life.
I do. Hey, I was going to make a Porsche comment, but I'm not. So
well, I was also, but I refrained.
Dude, fine. Dude, I don't know shit about Porsches. I'm not a Porsche guy. I
bought
the car last minute.
But wait a minute. Did I not know what your paddle shifters were?
Yeah, that's a PDK. Yeah, it's got PDK. Which, the thing is, when that came out, like the paddle shifters, like I think now the Mustangs have paddle shifters and traction control in them.
Sure they do.
Where was that for my old drag car? Like, like how that would have been handy, Yeah. So, all right, you know what? Let's talk about some serious gun business here. There was a press report that came out that one of the gun companies said there's going to be a price increase on ammo because they're experiencing price increases on their components, and it's nothing to do with they're like up to 11%. They gave a breakdown, like could be 3% for this, 4, 6, 7, but the highest was 11. So I'm just basically going to say expect a baseline price increase of at least 11% on your ammo above and beyond whatever the scalpers are trying to do. But there was a story that I noticed the other day, maybe yesterday, and I never heard of this until yesterday. There seems to be some drama with Military Arms Channel and Tim Harmison, who we spoke about earlier. And I guess the importation of some SVD Russian sniper rifles.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And
really?
I had Freeze try to figure out, because I couldn't make head or tails of it. Well, did you look at any of that, Freeze?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I looked at it. God, where to start?
Okay,
I mean, this whole thing is a dumpster fire.
Okay, the first thing to start off is what is the gun? Explain what the gun is and where it's coming from and why people want it.
Okay, the company FEG out of Hungary. Um, they've been making firearms for tons of years. I mean, forever. And they made uh, what the hell?
The sniper rifle, it's
Yeah,
the Russian SVD,
yeah.
is the sniper
They
rifle.
Yeah, so what they did is apparently they had a bunch of SVD parts, and they made a like a barrel and a receiver, and they agreed. FEG agreed to make 100 of these SVD rifles to import into the United States. And there was a guy. He's a European dude. I don't remember his name. It's a weird name. And he basically got this together, and he went on an AK forum, and he got like a bunch of people on this AK forum to agree that hey, if they make it, we'll buy it. And so FEG decided, okay, we're going to make 100 of these rifles to import into the United States, and which they did. And the import company, I think they're called Trident or something along those lines.
Yeah, I
I
think
could
they're
be
in Maryland.
imported them. Now, mind you, these 100 guys on the forum, or however many guys on the forum, no one put up any money. There was no money put up for this. There was no buy-in or anything. So basically, when the importer got these guns, the importer sold them to Copper Customs, and Copper Customs basically, I guess, started out by putting the guns on Gunbroker. Well, they upset all these internet forum guys because the internet forum guys thought they were going to get like first dibs at these guns. And they're all up in arms. Apparently, Tim over at Mac has some kind of stake in Copper Customs, whether he's uh,
See,
a partial
I
owner.
thought he owned Copper Customs.
I don't think he owns it. I think he's invested in it.
Like I
I could,
remember when you and I went to AIM for a business thing, and we were back in the warehouse, and they told us that Tim, like now that he's like owns Copper Customs, like their
yeah,
relationship had changed with him.
yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure on that. But look, at the end of the day, with all the internet drama that's going on about these SVDs and the price they're selling them for, look, I don't think. Okay, the internet guys that are all up in arms, and then the internet, of course, in general, is supporting them. They're all raising hell, thinking they've been screwed. Well, the truth is, I, I don't really see how they've been screwed. They didn't have any money invested, so they really had no dog in the hunt. Um, Now, would it have been nice if Copper Customs went out and said, "Hey, look, this is the price of the gun. We'll give you guys first try at it." Yeah, that would have been nice, but they're not obligated to do that. And
So
if they choose not to, it's not that they're the bad guy here.
now there were a couple things that I saw when I was trying again because apparently this is apparently getting these guns into the U.S. I think they signed up for this list 2 years ago,
Yeah,
and I was like, I heard about this either yesterday or the day before yesterday at most. That's guns I don't go on gun forums, and one of the things I saw that immediately was a red flag was this person who is not in the United States, who may or may not be affiliated officially or unofficially with FEG in Hungary, told the people in the United States that they could have these guns for like $3,850 or $3,800. And that right off was a huge red flag because it's like, wait a minute. Maybe FEG in Hungary needs $38 per gun, but getting those guns into the U.S., there's going to be shipping. There's going to be the importer's fees. There's going to be a tax on. Usually, I think it's like 2% on import tax, like to the government, of the value of the gun. So even if it's $3,800, the value of the gun, you got to pay 2% to the government. You just can't. The government gets their bite, the U.S. government, and then on top of that, so whatever that price is, so that ends up before it even ends up at a gun dealer. Whatever that price is, the gun dealer has to collect a profit off the gun. I'm not done yet. I'm not done. The gun dealer has to collect a profit because I'm just saying it for the listener. Has to collect a profit off the gun. So there's a markup. There's also a federal tax that's sold on every gun that basically goes to the parks, the parks and the Park Service. It's like 11%. Like, it's a high tax. It's 11%. I think it's 11%. And then on top of that, wherever you live is like, we live here. I live in Hamilton County, Ohio. It's 7% here? Like
7.5.
Like 3,800. The number that was quoted these people from this dude that may or may not has nothing to do with the cost of what this is going to be to land it here on these shores. And it's like this. I mean, that's already fucked up. And these people were thinking. So I guess did Mac Mac I don't believe was a part of any of this list for 2 years. But then he went to the importer when the guns came in and said, "We'll take them all," and stroked him a check for $500,000 or more, or six, maybe it could be $1 million. I mean, it's hundreds. It's at least $400,000, if not whatever. And took the guns and took them to Copper Customs. And he came in out of nowhere, and I guess these people somehow thought they magically were going to get these guns. But here's what's weird is okay, FEG wanted to see a list. FEG and Hungary wanted to we need to know that if I'm going to make these guns, that people in America want to buy them because we don't believe you. And this dude's they want to buy them. Let me show you. And he did the shit on apparently 2 gun forums and made 2 lists. FEG was okay, we'll be able to get the guns and we'll get $3,800 per gun. And then they get their money. But then, okay, how does the importer who brought these guns in, how did he or she or they, or him or her, whatever the pronoun is, how did they, they don't have to take guns on import. Companies, some company in Vietnam could be hey, I want to sell you single shot, 22 caliber cane guns or something. And be I don't fucking want those. I'm not gonna I'm just curious, how did the importer in Maryland find out about the guns from FEG? Who was the importer in Maryland expecting to sell these to? Because I don't believe that importer sells directly. Importers generally sell wholesale to retail because they don't, if you want to make full retail on a product, you can spend the next 2 years selling it. Wholesalers get the money, get the product, change hands, boom, get it out and get their money and get out of it quick. That's part of the reason of wholesale retail. There's so much in this story that just doesn't add up as to how this transacted from FEG to an importer. Did this importer, were they just sitting on these guns and they're yeah, we don't know what to do with these guns? And Mac comes down from the mountain and goes, let me save you. Or did the importer get these guns and then they start calling around to all of their clients going, we have 100 or 50 of these SVD copy guns. Who wants them? That makes no sense.
I mean, I would imagine that importers are always having feelers out for, because that's what they do. They import shit, So I would imagine that this importer struck up a deal with FEG, knowing that I guarantee you that the importer's just yeah, I have two, because the importer's working both ends of the deal. They're over there in Europe trying to secure deals for whatever they can bring in. And then they're here in the United States dealing with wholesalers or retailers going, okay, if we get these in, are you interested? So I would imagine before these guns came in, the importer probably had a deal already worked out with Copper Customs before the guns even came into the United States. That would be my guess, because the importer's not going to sit there and get stuck with 50 or 100 guns they can't move. Not when they shell out that kind of money.
Maybe Copper Customs swooped in and offered more money.
Could be. That's a possibility.
Well, Freeze, I have a quick question. Isn't there a ATF law that says you have to have X amount of guns to be imported before they're accepted in the United States? Like you have to have 50 guns or 100 guns, and then we'll let them come into the country, rather than just 10 guns or 8 guns.
I can actually answer this question.
Dumb question, but I'm sorry.
No, there's no dumb. I mean, there are dumb questions, but it's not a dumb question. You're conflating a couple of different things. So, and that brings up a good point, something that we skipped over, Freeze. Okay, so these guns are not SVD guns. They're copies made in Hungary, and they actually have a weird name like ND18 or something, right?
Yeah,
they're
correct.
Clones, because you can't get Russian guns into the U.S. because we have an embargo against Russian guns since they invaded Crimea and Ukraine because of Obama. There was an executive order, no more importation of Russian guns. Well, these are, as far as the ATF is concerned, these guns out of Hungary are not approved. They're new guns. It's a new model. And so they have to go through a process of being sporting purposes, a point system, and whether they can pass, like you can't make full auto machine gun. You have to pass all these rules. So there had to be some back and forth, I would think, between the ATF and FEG, because basically I'm sure FEG made a couple, sent them to the ATF or the importer, and then the importer and ATF, and like the ATF's like yes, or the ATF's like no, you got to change this, this, and this, send it back. They make the changes, send it back again. They go through it, say yes, you can import these, and then they import them in. So that's the process for approval for importation, because you can't import guns that are like easily convertible to machine guns, for example. No. That's the extreme example.
And is there a number of how many they could import?
No.
Or a minimum they have to import?
I can go overseas and find a gun that I want, and if it's importable in the United States, I can pay to have it imported. I can have one example imported. It'll take me about 2 years, and it'll cost me a ton of money, but I can do it. As long as ATF says it's a legal gun to import, I can import one gun for myself.
So actually then, because they were made in Hungary, even though they have Russian parts, is how they bypass the embargo.
No, they're not Russian parts. Apparently it's FEG manufactured. I believe it's FEG copied this gun and then made some changes to it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a Russian. It's not a violation of the embargo. It's not a violation of the Russian embargo. It's like a Toyota Camry made in Korea, not in Japan. So it's like, it's fine. It's not a Russian gun. It's a Hungarian gun. But there's some people are losing their minds on this with, I heard a story that I guess Mac listed a couple of these guns on Gunbroker and people ran them up to like 25. Is it 25 million or $1 million or $14 million or $10 million?
It was like $10 million before they yanked them, because they were just driving up the prices. But that had to do. Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, Mac posted a video about how he hated shills, how he thought people were pieces of shit for buying guns and ammo at retail and then putting them on Gunbroker and jacking up the price. And it was a really shitty video. And it's interesting because it kind of goes back to what you were talking about on, making comments on Twitter and it coming back to bite you in the ass. So seriously, he makes this really shitty video about how he just absolutely hates pieces of garbage that shill up prices on Gunbroker. Okay, now all of a sudden these SVDs come out and Copper Customs throws them on Gunbroker for I don't know what the actual price was. Say it was like 6,500 or some
I
shit
heard
like
the
that.
starting price was 4,000,
Okay,
but I
so
think there was it a yeah but I heard it started at 4,000.
yeah, well, all the people that felt they had uh, that felt they should have been offered these guns were pissed off because now the Copper Customs is putting these guns on Gun Broker to kind of see where the price is going to go, and and it's not $3,800. And Mac, already talked about how everyone was a piece of shit for doing exactly what they're doing, which is not really true, but it's perception, and
Okay. So Danny, ask me a question. What is the current street price of a Russian-made SVD United States? Go ahead and ask me that question today.
I would say $6,000.
I think it's 25 or $20,000.
Wow.
I heard Mac is supposedly now they're going to go through. Supposedly he's not part of Copper Customs now, and Copper Customs is going to go through the lists, and they're going to offer people a chance to buy the guns. But it's like 68. They're offering like maybe $6,800.
which is a fair price.
That's probably a fair. That's probably.
I
That's
mean,
probably.
Plus,
I think it's ridiculously high personally. But I mean, when you look at the street value of you import it, and I mean that's realistically that's probably a decent profit margin
They
for
probably have.
everyone
They probably
involved.
legit have $4,000 into them.
I mean, exactly. So I mean, I'm thinking that's a fair price.
Yeah, more than
I
four
mean,
grand.
and I'll bet you won't get that out the door for under 75 with taxes and fees.
Oh yeah, then like the 11% tax. Yeah,
yeah,
um, and a lot of times that 11% tax is hidden in the list price. So I mean, I don't.
yeah. I mean,
It's a huge mess, and I'm not really that. Like, we're not that interested in it. I mean, look. Do we want a Hungarian FEG SVD clone for $1,600? Yeah, yeah, we'll take one.
yeah.
But Freeze, you know as well as I do because you've been in the 1911 game. How many times on the internet, especially gun forums, if we were to get on, and I'm not shitting on our listeners, I'm not, but I'm just being real. If we were to get on our social media, and we were to say, hey, we have a John 1911 AR rifle. How many of y'all would be interested in buying that? And whatever the number is, like there'd be, I don't know, let's say there's 10 commenters, right? Just to make
Okay.
it simple, like 10 people
Yeah,
go, absolutely, I would love a John 1911 AR.
yeah.
Well, when the time comes to put up the money to buy it, like, hey, we got one, are you ready to? Well, it's not a good time right now, or there's the COVID, or tax season's here, or my stub my toe, or I need braces for Johnny. And like literally, it's like you're lucky to get 10% of people who said they were going to buy something actually buy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That happens all the time in the gun industry.
Hmm.
And part of me can't help but wonder a lot of people that are like, that's my gun. And it's like, well, if the dude had showed up and said, give me $3,800, how many of them would have been like, dude, right now the COVID, I can't. I mean, my
Well,
wife, the COVID,
okay.
my dog stubbed his toe.
So I heard that in this 2 year long process, I told you these 100 people, they ponied up no money.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I did hear at one point in the process, um, the dude that was putting this together wanted to know if FEG wanted to take any money from these people. Is like kind of like like a deposit, and FEG declined. Now, of course, FBG declined for multiple reasons. One, they had to first off guarantee that they can even get these guns imported into the United States. But secondly, think about this. So we're doing a John 1911 AR-15, and 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 it's like, okay, we're taking 10% deposits, and 100 people give us a 10% deposit. Well, when the guns are up and ready to roll, okay, there's 100 people that put down 10%, but how many of those people are going to have the 90% to give us? Again, it's the same problem. Now we've got to refund all these deposits. You know, it's once you start accepting money, it just compounds the problem.
And how do you take money from people in the U.S. when you're in Hungary for guns that need end user certificates and have to be ITAR compliant to come into the United States? They have to be exported out of Hungary with an end user certificate, into the United States to an importer, then to a retailer to go through a 4473 background check. It's like, I mean, it's the idea that the people on the gun forum were like, hey man, do you want to take a deposit? I'm not being disrespectful, is so naive and so ill-informed about how any of this works. It's almost mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's wrong here.
Yeah.
Because it's just I don't know how wrong Mac is, but a lot of this is fucked up.
I mean, again, like I said at the very beginning, this thing's such a dumpster fire. I don't really think the internet forum guys are that wrong. I don't think Copper Customs is wrong. I don't think Mac's wrong. I don't think anyone's inherently wrong. I think everyone holds a little bit to blame here. But the internet has made this much worse than it should have been.
Yes, the internet's made this terrible. And you know what? I will give Mac and Copper Custom, again, we don't know them, but I will give them the benefit. I will give them, they have a problem. And this is the problem with this whole deal. I mean, I guess at one point they were claiming they didn't know about there was a list. And then I guess their story is, well, there's two lists. How are we supposed to honor a list? And it's just a turd bowl. But here's the problem. So, okay, let's just say it's a John 1911 Armory. And I'm like, hey, dude, there's 100 FEG guns coming in, and I think they're going to be worth a fair amount of money. Let's stroke a check at the importer, scoop these up, corner the market, or maybe the importer's like, you got to buy one, you got to buy them all. We don't know what the terms are because the importer wants out of these. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And he's like, I can give you a better deal, but you got to buy them all. Maybe there's not a choice here. Yeah. But then the thing is, we stroke a check, but we know that it's like, okay, we wrote this big check, but now before we can sell the guns for a profit, we have to spend the next, 2 months dicking around with this list to make all these people happy before we can release the rest of them to the open market and make our money. Like, that's terrible at business.
Yeah.
And like, how long does the list go?
Yeah.
How long do you give people? How do you, I don't even get into the whole argument of like contacting them. You can just do it publicly. But it's like, we're not making money. Like, our money is not making money. We write a check for, I don't know, let's say it's $1 million. We write a check for $1 million. That's not $1 million that's sitting in a bank account. That's not $1 million in other areas making money. That's $1 million tied up in a bunch of rifles that we can't sell as fast as we can for as much as they can bring because this situation with these two gun forms is fucked up. That might even be why maybe they couldn't find maybe the importer was having a hard time finding somebody because they're like, fuck you. The second I write you this check, I'm putting them on my website and I'm not getting involved in this mess.
Yeah.
There's more to this story we don't know yet.
Oh, I'm sure there is. There's always more to the story.
So. Okay, well, you know what? We're going to do a new thing here, then we're going to wrap this one up before we go to the police blotter, because the police blotter is off the chain. And so, for those that have been here this long, Danny, I don't know if you don't know if we're doing this today, but we've been soliciting user feedback from people, and they can either email us a voice memo message off their phone, and we can play it on the podcast, and if it's a question or if it's feedback or whatever, we can respond to it or do what we're going to do. Or we also can give our company phone number. We just check the voicemail. If it's something I want to save, I just save it to a file and I put it in a podcast. So I have three messages from people. We're going to listen to them one at a time. If there is a response, and if you at home would like to leave us a message, I mean, we reserve the right to not play it if it's, if it's terrible. But I mean, but you will get bumped to the front of the line if it's funny or you make us happy. So, I mean, hey, as long as we're happy, we don't care about the podcast. But
Actually, I really like that concept.
yeah, it's our phone number is 202-735, and wait for it, 1911. That's 202-735-1911. Leave a voicemail. Rings here in the Armory, and we will get your message. We reserve the right to delete it. So, okay, is everybody ready for the? I got 3 of them here, and Freeze, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm here. I'm waiting.
I have not done this on pod, so I hope this plays, and I hope it records, and I hope you guys can hear it. So this will be an easy. This is from Bob, and I'm not going to say Bob's last name, but we'll go ahead, and this is Bob. First message, go.
Hi, Marky, Freeze, and Dan. This is Bob. Love your podcast. Keep up the good work. Hope to hear the next one soon.
See, how nice was that?
That was very nice.
It was nice. Just, it's nice to know. We've never heard from Bob. We don't know Bob. Now we know Bob exists, right? I mean, that's fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no Bandhammer.
Yeah, no Bandhammer. Bandit Bob, motherfucker. I'm kidding. No,
Bandhammer Bob.
Yeah, Bandhammer Bob. So, thank you, Bob. In all seriousness, thank you. Bob was the first person to send us a message.
Thank you, Bob.
And it was because I literally put out the Clarion call, and it was crickets. Nobody was really sending anything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And some people sent emails are like, how do I do voice memo on my phone? I was like, okay, you know what?
When you hear the beep.
I was like, here's what, because they didn't know how to record a voice memo and send it via email. So I was like, you know what? Just call our voicemail. Just leave a voicemail message in a phone like a normal person, and I'll figure it out on my end. So this next message is from Will, and here is it. I don't even remember what it says. So yeah, we'll play Will now. Go.
Hey, Marky, this is Will Anderson, a listener from Illinois, calling with a question for the podcast. Was just curious if 3 of you guys could let me know if there's a certain gun you ever had that you wish you wouldn't have sold, and vice versa, if there's a gun that you should have bought that you had your hands on that you didn't. Appreciate an answer on any of that stuff. If you want to add it to the podcast, we will talk to you again. Thank you. Bye.
Could you guys hear that message?
Oh, perfectly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that I did tell Freeze ahead of time that this message was coming. So he has had a minute to think about it.
Ask me mine, too.
Okay. You know what? Okay. Chief political correspondent, give me your best and your worst, your biggest regret, and your favorite. What is it?
My regret is I didn't get a Kimber 45 when I had a chance, a 1911. That's my regret. The guy was getting divorced, and he needed the money, and he said, "I'll take $300 for it."
Oh man,
I know.
Yeah,
Stop it.
Yeah,
stop it.
Was this back in the '90s when they were really good? When they were decent back then?
Yes. It was unfortunately, where I work, the divorce rate was very high. So, you guys know better, so I won't say anything.
Yeah.
And he only wanted $300 for it, and I didn't buy it.
Do you
I
remember
wish I
the
should
model?
have.
Remember what it looked like? Was it a?
It was the one with the pearl wood handles, and it was stainless. It was beautiful, like ruby wooden handles. Oh, it was gorgeous. He wanted $300 and he did not take it. It was a 45.
Yeah, those Kimber. There's an argument to be made that the Kimber pistol made the modern 1911 custom market, because all of a sudden you could buy retail a gun from Kimber with all these custom features, and it really put the zap on Colt's forehead and really opened up the custom market idea to the masses that there was more than just Colt out there.
Well, that's my regret. But on the smart side, the gun that I'm always glad I kept is my high point.
Your high point?
Yes, I have a high point 45 that I absolutely love. Don't ask me why. I just like it.
Hey, Freeze, you know the guy at the tractor place, right? Bob.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was telling. I was dropping off a bush hog yesterday, and he was
You
he
broke
was
it again?
he was bright. No, what? No, all the oil leaked out of it. So I'm gonna let them handle it. He was doing your whole but the high point thing. He says he's got two high point but the carbine. He's got two high point carbines that he thinks are the bee's knees, and I'm like, a lot of people like those high point carbines.
They do.
He's got
Yes,
one
they do.
He's got one in 45. I didn't know they made one in 45, and I can't remember what other caliber he said it was in, but he was singing its praises.
Yeah, they make a 40 also.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So
people like them.
So the question is, hold on, let me play it again. The question is,
Hey, Marky, this is Will Anderson, a listener from Illinois, calling with a question for the podcast. Was just curious if three of you guys could let me know if there's a certain gun you ever had that you wish you wouldn't have sold, and vice versa, if there's a gun that you should have bought that you had your hands on that you didn't.
okay, so a gun you regret selling, and then a gun you regret not buying. So, Freeze, do you have any? It's probably regret selling for you, but go ahead. Easy.
Probably one of the biggest guns I ever regret selling was I had a really nice Tula Arsenal SVT-40 that was just absolutely mint, and I really regret selling that.
Okay. I can see that.
Yeah.
What gun have you had in your hands or seen that you didn't buy that you wish you had?
Oh man, I don't know. That's a tough question. There's so many of them. I mean, really, there's so many potential guns that I could have bought that I didn't, that I should have. I can't even answer that. You know, I don't know.
No answer. Okay, fine.
Yeah,
Sorry,
no.
Will. He's disrespecting you. No answer. So,
I mean,
but you know what, Will? You got to understand. Freeze had COVID this week, so he's just getting better. So it's nothing against you personally. He won't let him slide if he had legit had COVID. So you care to change your answer, or are you going to stick with that one?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, I've been offered to. I mean, shoot. I don't know. I mean, there's just too many to answer. I mean, you know, I kind of want to buy everything.
Yeah. Okay, so all right, the gun that I've sold. This one will be pretty easy because it's not that many. A gun that I've sold that I wish I hadn't. And you know, my situation is, you know, like many people, as a younger person, I had more guns than money, or bigger. I had, you know, bigger appetites than I had wallets. So what happened was I got into a situation where, you know, non-standard caliber guns, I started realizing these are too expensive to feed, and so I sold guns that were hard to get ammo for. And one in particular today that is coming to mind is I sold a Moss 4956, basically a French M14 kind of gun. It's not really an M14, but it's a kind of in the same category of gun. The 1950s gun in 7.5 French, and you know, it was kind of expensive to feed. It wasn't like a real accurate gun compared to, like, you know, a lot of the high performance guns. And the thing is, now with the reference collection, I'm going to have to buy it back, and that kind of hurts a little bit. It's like, oh fuck, you know, that's truly a gun that I kind of wish. Well, you know, I sold that one. As far as a gun that I haven't bought that I wish I had. I'll give a few honorable mentions, and I'm just joking, but it's a true story. There was a postal worker 20 some years ago at this gym that I used to work out at. He was a Marine and a career Army guy. And then he worked at the post office. And so, like, this dude signed a civil service. He wrote his name to a civil service exam. He passed. And he came up to me one day, and he's like, hey, he's real, big power lifter guy. And we're in a weight room, and he's like, hey, Marky, you're into guns, right? I'm like, yeah, dude, yeah, I'm pretty big. He's like, would you be interested in a full auto AK-47? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I got it from a buddy of mine. Like, I can't remember where he said he got it from, but basically he's like, it's not registered. I was like,
wow, full auto?
It's a full auto gun. And, part of me's just like I'm looking like, is the ATF here? Like, what is this? Like, I knew the guy, but I didn't really know the guy is a gym guy. And I was like, yeah, nah, man. And I can't remember what I swear to you, if I recall, I think he wanted, God, did he want $1,500? And then when I told him, I was like, yeah, I mean, I appreciate it, but I can't be caught with a machine gun. Like, I go to prison, it's 20 years. And then he dropped it to $900. And I was like, yeah, man, I really, and then he started to try to sell me. And he's like, well, yeah, the guy I got it from, he's in the Army and he's a gun expert and he knows what he's doing and he converted it or something. And like, I'm just like, yeah, I mean, I appreciate it, but I just, yeah, I can't. I'm gonna have to skip on that one. So I'm trying to think. But what's a gun that I could have bought that I didn't buy? Let me think about this one. I generally buy everything I want within reason.
No, not you.
I'm trying to. I mean, that sounds so bad, but we have priorities in life, and I don't smoke crack, and I don't chase whores, and
don't go to Jack Shacks.
Don't go to Jack Shacks. I mean, I had a guy had to teach me what a Jack Shack. He said, like, there's an amp over. I'm like, what's an amp? He's like, an amp. I'm like, what's that? He's like, a Jack Shack. I'm like, what's a Jack Shack? And he had explained to me. I was like, holy fuck. So, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a gun. Yeah, back in the old bad days. Yeah, that guy had an Interpol warrant out poured on him later in life. We'll talk about that another time. I don't know. I'm trying to think what I could have bought. It's probably going to be something that I could have bought that later on became very valuable.
A 357 revolver?
No, I mean, like, I'll tell you one. Freeze had offered. Here's one. We've talked about it. Freeze had contacted me one day, and a good buddy of his, wanted to sell a Colt Python. Was it a hunter?
It was a whitetail hunter.
Whitetail, and
yeah.
It's a Colt Python revolver, a factory. I think it was Parkerized. It had a factory Parkerized scope on the top of it.
Yep.
And I'm not a big hunter, and the price was really good. And years later, I think I even reached back out to you, like, for the reference collection. I'm like, hey, man, you know anyone that still might have that revolver? And you were like, dude, that is long gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they became pretty valuable. And I probably wish I'd bought that. But, honestly, now with the new re-release of the new Pythons, we're just as well served by having a new Python. So it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Let me see. Hold on. I'm trying to think. There's been so many Milsurp guns. Okay, I've got one. I've absolutely got one. This one burns my ass every day. It burns my ass every day because I'm going to actually tell people that we're trying to buy one, and we haven't. Years ago, I was in a gun store over not that far from Freeze's house. I'm not going to say the store. It's not there anymore. And there was an AR-180 in the store. And I can't remember. I think it was an Armalite, but I honestly can't remember. And It's it's on the rack. The store carried a lot of milsurp stuff, and I didn't really know that. I mean, this was years ago, and I didn't know that much about them. Like, I just was like, man, this is cool. Like, what is this? Like, it's got a folding stock, and it and all this stuff. And this was probably during the assault weapons ban. So if I recall, I remember there was a guy there at the store who hung out there, and basically over my shoulder, he was basically like, Marky, don't buy that gun. He's like, it takes special magazines that you can't get, and it's not this. You're not going to be able to get parts for it because it's not an AR, and it's never, you're going to back yourself in a corner, buy that piece of crap, and basically talk. I literally was going to pull the money out. I was going to buy this AR-180, and today an Armalite AR-180 are the very, oh my God, a cheap one's $1,800, and they can go $2,500. And it kills me to pay that. I could have bought this gun, I think, for $400.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's my biggest regret. So that's my biggest one.
Well, we still have a third caller, don't we?
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. That's right. Thank you, Danny. So the next caller is Garrett, and this one's going to be more for you, Freeze, because this one's a little bit more technical, but I don't think he's really giving us enough information. But here we go. Hit Garrett.
How do I tell if a 1911 or 2011 is undersprung? Having some issues where sometimes my slide is not going all the way forward. This happens when the gun has about 200 to 300 rounds through it.
Okay. I can go first, or unless you want to go first, Freeze.
Yeah, go ahead. Go first.
Oh, I was going to go first.
Okay, Mr. Kimber, 1911. Go ahead. No.
It's easy. The springs stretch.
Dude, there's people that do that.
Well, that was my answer. I thought I'd throw some levity in there.
I have seen people pull a spring out of a gun, stretch it out, put it back in. I have, look, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, you don't have access to a spring. It's like, well, maybe my gun will work. Maybe my gun will work the rest of the day.
Well, I half-heartedly meant that.
Yeah. So, there's a couple of things here, Garrett, with this question. It's kind of there's some holes in the question. So this would be assuming that your gun is fitted properly. That, okay, like the link is the proper size and the lower lugs, and you don't have barrel bump or barrel bump, and the hoods and the radial lugs and everything's fitting properly. Like, so, I mean, there's all of that. And you can even get into issues with, like, sometimes you can't get the gun to unlock or lock, maybe depending on if the top, because it's a tilting Browning design, the barrel drops, so a bushing has to be relieved at the top of the bushing around 12 o'clock, and if it's not relieved enough, it can cause some binding, but that typically happens on the way back, but it can happen on the way forward. So, assuming that you're not having other issues, my philosophy always was, and a lot of these 1911 nerd guys did not agree with this, I would spring a gun as heavy as I could, like a 1911, if it was for work. And so, for example, back when I was carrying a single stack 45 on the streets, a 5-inch 45 ACP steel gun, I put a 20-pound recoil spring in it. And, it's a little bit harder to rack it, and work it. And, some people would make the argument, well, you're just masking other problems. No, my argument was my gun would run longer, dirtier, drier, but longer, dirtier with a heavier spring in it. Run a gun as heavy as you can. Spring as heavy as you can, but it still cycles and functions. So if you feel that you don't feel like your gun, when you cycle it slow, that it's binding, I mean, if you've got a 10-pound spring it is, a 1911, a 9mm, put a 12-pound in it. If it's a 5-inch gun, 45, put if it's got a 16-pound, at least put an 18-pound in it. But go ahead and up that spring poundage just to give you you're not going to hurt the gun as long as it's fit correctly. You're not going to hurt it. And Freeze and I years ago did a test. We sprung a 5-inch 1911 with 26-pound recoil springs, and it ran fine, right?
It was a Dan Wesson 1911.
Jesus, how the hell did you rack the thing?
It was tough.
And it had target sights on it.
Yeah,
so you had to try to reach over the top and rack it.
Holy cow.
It was tough, but it ran.
It ran. So my point is, if you're like, oh my God, if you want to go up an extra 2 pounds on a spring, or change a spring, I mean, like, a couple things to consider, okay? Especially if it's a 1911, it's an older gun or it's older spring technology. I'd be changing that, especially like a 45. I'd be changing that spring every 3,000 rounds. And here's the thing: you may not have 3,000 rounds through it, but if you've been racking that slide and other people have been racking that slide or dry firing it and just messing with it, it could have 3,000 cycles on it. And if it's an old style spring and not modern spring technology, springs are cheap. Go buy a new spring kit with a recoil spring and a firing pin spring and just drop them in tandem, in parallel. Put them in, boom, boom. And then, with a fresh spring, I would do, typically it used to be like, some of the old 5-inch 1911 guys would say the original 1911 was 14 pounds, then it was 16 pounds, and then a lot of the modern guns really tend to run 17, 18 pounds. It was 18, and then what happened was one of the major spring companies was selling the same poundage, but they actually told the companies, no, this is now a 17-pound spring, not an 18-pound spring, even though it's the same poundage. So there's a lot of room to play with your springs.
Oh yeah.
So go ahead, drop some springs in it and see what happens. Also, what you may want to consider if your gun's on the edge of function. I mean, it sounds goofy, and I wouldn't want this to be the reason why it runs. But if you can use a modern lubrication like a silicone or Teflon-based lubricant, not a petroleum product, but these super slick, like Slip 2000, but everybody, it doesn't have to be Slip 2000. I think Lucas Oil makes them. A super crazy, it's like crazy space shuttle NASA slick stuff. I would run your gun with that, and those typically they tend to run a little bit better, longer. So that would be my answer, Garrett. And hopefully that helps you. I don't know, but we appreciate your message. And so for the most comprehensive question so far of the first inaugural customer feedback or listener feedback on the podcast. So was that terrible, guys? I mean, was that the worst thing you ever did? I mean,
no, I actually liked it.
Freeze. I know Freeze is doing the best he can to hang on. He's so wasted and so tired. But I wanted to. We're gonna do the police blotter. We'll go ahead and get out of here because I know Freeze is ready to pass out. So I've got 4 police blotter stories. No, I've got. Well, you know what? I just deleted one. We'll make it 3 police blotter stories, and so I'm gonna let you guys pick the honorable mentions and then the one you're most interested in. Okay. Do you want to hear the full story on the stolen Dorito truck, or do you want to hear the full story about the man bites the ear off on the airplane, or do you want to hear the full story about the man using the gay dating app to kidnap and torture gay dudes?
I kind of want to hear about the Dorito truck.
Yeah, I want to hear about the Dorito truck.
Okay, Dorito truck. And this is stolen Doritos truck chase. Let's see here. So a dude in Oklahoma, I'll just read this. A dude in Oklahoma City thought it would be a good idea to steal a Doritos truck that was sitting unattended at a local gas station. The dude in question, Joshua Carpe, Karpe, and we do mean in question because a Doritos truck wrapped in one gigantic advertisement is not exactly your run-of-the-mill Honda on the road. This, let's see here. They chased him. It has a giant Dorito nacho cheese chip ad on the side of it. I can see the ad. and the police chased him across 3 counties for 90 minutes before shooting out the tires.
Nice.
It didn't even use stop sticks. Apparently, they had to shoot the tires.
Nice.
Police Captain Jeff Spurl was incredulous, and I quote, "I would love to know the motivation of stealing a truck that's very, very easy to spot and doesn't go very fast." Adding, "What do you think you're going to do with a truck like that?" So, Joshua Carpe and the stolen Dorito truck. So,
That's Not-cho truck.
And there's the title, ladies and gentlemen. There's the title right at the end. So Danny comes through. So Danny spikes it in the end zone. Well, that wraps up episode 207 of the John 1911 podcast. If you want to see any stories or pictures of links of anything we discussed, you can go to our website, john1911.com. That's JOHN1911.com. It's all about shooting guns and having fun. Everybody, have a good day.
See you later.
Keep those voicemails coming. Bye-bye.
Yeah, that's Not-cho truck.